All right. Well, I've hit the big red button, so we're officially rolling. So, so you felt vindicated by my
Yes.
reaction to "If you're reading this, it's too late." So please explain. I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah. I mean,
And
just like having.
You're a Drake fan, for the record, right?
Oh, and it's gotten so bad that my partner for Christmas painted me a Take Care themed painting because of how big of a Drake fan I am. It's getting
Oh
out
my
of
fucking
hand
god, man.
to the point where the person that loves me the most, the gift they thought it was a Drake painting. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Um, so I know that just having heard your reactions before and like sort of getting a sense of what your taste in hip hop was like,
Sure.
I wasn't too hopeful on Take Care. Like I wasn't too hopeful. um, Now with If You're Reading This, I was I was much more hopeful because like it had Travis Scott,
Hmm.
a Travis Scott feature on the album, which I know you like. Um, and the beats, the production was like that super like 808 boosted, like slow Houston sound,
Right.
which we talked about in the last interview we did for a little bit. But I, s- it wasn't that surprising that like listening to Take Care, going straight from Take Care to If You're Reading This, is a pretty big jump,
It is a big jump.
especially like so. I want to like give you a little bit of context behind If You're Reading This is too late.
All right.
And in this dissertation, I will. So, before Take Care, there are I think two mixtapes that come out, right? And
Okay.
so there's Thank Me Later, and I don't know why I'm missing out on the other one, but it has one of my favorite Drake songs, "She's Atlanta Vegas" on it. But that's around like 2009. So I think in 2009 he releases two albums, and then or two mixtapes, and then his debut is Take Care, and he gets a lot of flack for Take Care, right? Because the hip hop community doesn't know how to deal with a light skin singing rapper, and so like
Interesting.
so
Which is
so you
weird
have
because
like
I mean, I didn't love Take Care, but I think it's a solid album. I think there's a lot of good things going on in Take Care. I think there's good production. I think he's got good flow. I mean, I think that's a pretty strong album, honestly. Even though I don't really click with it entirely, I
yeah.
think there's a lot of good things going on.
Right on, right on. Good to hear that, like in retrospect. But I kind of think we came to that like middle ground in the last interview,
Yeah, we
probably.
did. Yeah.
So um so yeah, like he releases Take Care, and so you have like the Joe Buttons of the world, right? Those like super hard nosed hip hop like critics that are like, man, what the fuck is this shit? Like, they don't know how to deal with a light skinned singing ass rapper from Canada. It's the softest shit in the world. And then you have this guy who's like running circles around us, and then he drops Nothing Was the Same, which is one of the best hip hop albums of the century so far. And so he's on a run. And so I'm thinking back to when you had a comment in the listen through when you were like, yeah, it's just sort of the same like, self-aggrandizing shit that he's doing. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Sure.
But first of all, If You're Reading This Is Too Late came out of nowhere, right? I remember the day it came out, there was no announcement, there was no rollout. I was like on the bus on my way to a debate conference, and I saw there was a new Drake album, and I started crying, right?
Oh my
and
fucking god,
and
dude.
and so he was talking shit because in many regards he like proved that he can drop whenever he wants to as this like mixed rapper from Canada and that it'll go number one. And he already knew that because even like, 2012 to like 2015 he had a number one song every year. So he
Oh
was
wow.
gonna talk shit on the album,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's where a little bit of that came from, where you had the bulk of the industry, surprisingly, like the real hip hop heads coming out against what Drake was about. And so he felt like he had to, shit
It
on him a little bit.
It is a great point, though, to say, look. And honestly, when I kind of zoom out a little bit and think about Drake's point of view, perspective, what he's doing, it is kind of a just gigantic middle finger to all the haters to literally no promotion, no teaser, no nothing, just plop it out of thin air and it goes number one. Like, there's literally nothing else you have to say at that point. Like, it just does it on its own. I don't have to lift a fucking finger. I just crushed all of you guys without even trying.
Yep.
That's an interesting one right there, man.
And it was really, I think, the star of the album. I mean, of course you have Drake, but that's like sort of, I feel like that's a much more subjective thing than, like, this was OVO 40's, his producers, one of his best albums.
But
Like
he wasn't really even on reading this too much. There was a lot of other producers, which is something that surprised me when I was going through it.
Was it like a lot of Boy Wonder on that?
There's a Boy Wonder. There was some Party Next Door. There was a lot of different producers on this one. Honestly, that kind of threw me off a little bit because I remember getting through like the first 3 or 4 tracks and going, where the hell's 40? He wasn't even listed. Now, maybe the Genius annotations aren't specific enough because I know when I go into Spotify, if you click the credits on Spotify, it seems like there's more people listed there on average than inside of Genius. So maybe there was stuff that I just wasn't seeing.
Yeah, and maybe I just don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Yeah, so I'm just curious. Has your and I listened to a little bit of the additional thoughts, and the little bit that I got through, you were talking about sort of your, like, pedagogy of critique, right? But like, has your visceral reaction changed?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. So on the second half of that video, I talk about how if I basically I did a reset on the album over the weekend because we were up in Tahoe. It was actually kind of neat. It worked out in that I did the thing on Friday. We went to Tahoe for the weekend, and when we were coming home, it was still just snowy and cold and cloudy and all this other stuff. I told my wife, look, we're going to listen to it again. To her protest, she didn't want to listen to it again. So we're going to put it on again. Forget what we kind of want to hear or what we expect to hear or whatever, right? We're just going to put it on again. We're going to understand now that it's a chill album. It's a vibe album. And we're just going to let it be what it is. And driving home in the clouds and the snow and the wind, all this, going like 20 miles an hour on the freeway because it's all just snowy and shit. Yeah, okay. Now it's starting to click a little bit more. It's a chill album. It's a vibe album. And so coming at it from that perspective, it was a lot easier to settle into. I still feel like I enjoyed Take Care more. And I think part of it is my favorite Drake album or favorite Drake track so far is Take Care, the title track with him and Rihanna. I think the production's fucking beautiful. I think the vocals are great. I mean, I think it's just a great radio hit type song. I can enjoy it all the time. My wife loves it too. And so I think maybe that pulls me towards Take Care a little bit more. But there is a kind of a cool just vibe sense that flows throughout reading this too late.
There's a darkness to it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And incidentally, I also subjected my partner to listening to If You're Reading This, It's Too Late on our way up to like this cabin town here in Michigan. And he actually liked it.
Oh,
he
nice.
didn't hate it,
Nice.
which is like, and he's like a super 100 gecs, like Kim Petras.
Oh,
like,
Jesus.
hyper-pop.
Wow.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
it really makes me want to jump out of the car.
My wife and I did a sit down with 1,000, the album 1,000 gecs for by 100 gecs,
Yeah.
and that was like, what the fuck is going on? It's like putting cocaine in your Pop Rocks or something like that. Like, like holy shit, man, this is wild.
But yeah, like the album is kind of dark, and I think like some of because I believe that there are 2 songs that have the same Genuine sample. So in Legend you have So Anxious, and I think So Anxious by Genuine is used in another one of those songs. But So Anxious is like this light R&B song that comes from the 90s. And I mean, Genuine's the dude who made Pony, so it's like super like romantic and like sexual, and like it takes on a bit of a darker tint in production of like there's this, especially in Legend, where the dude's talking the most shit he's ever talked. I put my city on the map.
Right.
If I die, I'm a legend. This
Right.
is a 27-year-old,
Right. Yeah,
right?
it's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. It certainly is like one of those nighttime albums.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it has like that super raw Canadian sound of the time, and a lot of it was that vibey stuff because you also have to think about The Weeknd, and
Right.
I don't know if you've listened to any Party Next Door albums yet,
I haven't.
but
Not
it's
yet.
yeah, so it sort of falls in the same umbrella as like that dark, slow tempo, like chopped and screwed ish like style. What were your thoughts on the production of the record?
Once I got used to what it was, once I understood it as a vibe album, then I actually really started to enjoy the production because it was so stripped back and open and just kind of lots of space, lots of room. And honestly, I think once I did, that was probably my biggest 180 on the album. From my initial reaction where I didn't understand what the fuck was going on to taking a step back, doing a reset and listening to it again. Then I actually started to enjoy the production because it
Yeah,
does have some fucking just it's neat how for in hip hop like there's all these different styles of production and they all people can make these different styles work so well like Public Enemy. It Takes a Nation of Millions. Shit was made in 88 and that thing, the production in the album's fucking phenomenal. It's
yeah,
phenomenal. And I mean there's all this stuff going on and the samples and the beats and it's just fucking all over the place. And then you're doing something like Reading This, It's Too Late. Totally different vibe, totally different style. Lots of space in the production, but it's cool. You just kind of ride along to it and it just kind of floats around in the background and shit. And yeah, I think the production for me was the part I enjoyed the most.
yeah. It was production wise. I feel like it was like a full circle enmeshment with like Drake, hip hop, and R&B. Because like a lot of the production isn't like your traditional trap production, other than I think like Energy, Star 67 had a little bit of it on it,
Yeah, a
but
little
like
bit, right?
it's a very like melodic production style that I think is like a theme that runs through it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, I love that album, and I particularly love the use of Party Next Door on Wednesday Night Interlude.
Oh yeah, that one's cool. What's the track right before that that feeds right into it perfectly? I can't remember. I don't have it up
Oh,
in front of me.
is
But
it Company?
it
The
might
Travis Scott song?
be no. I think that's after. I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna do a no and pull it up, even though we're talking, because it causes a delay.
Oh
Preach.
yeah,
That ends up
yes,
being
yeah.
my that was my favorite track off the album. I really like Preach. And it's funny because on the initial reaction, I think that's the one I talk shit about the most. But I think Party Next Door did a great job. And then yeah, it just kind of puts you up on a little bit of this high and then you settle down into Wednesday Night Interlude. It's pretty fucking cool. I like that little because on the playlist here, that's where I go on a nice little run in terms of putting hearts. I've got hearts next to Star 67, Preach, Wednesday Night, Used to with Lil Wayne. I really like that one. Six
Oh yeah.
Man, Now and Forever, and Company. Those are the ones. That's just a consistent run for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's a very like I think it's a second half heavy album. I mean, I mean, to me, it's no skips. But it's like, I think it's that settling in thing, which there's something to be said about that.
Yeah,
And I think like if you're reading the stands, so may have taken you to task a little
a
bit
little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
too hard in the comments. Like some it's like fuck man. I thought I was the most intense about it. Jeez. Yeah.
In their defense, though, and I've said this before, no one had made the comment of you have to like this thing or whatever. Like they were just upset because clearly I did not come in with an open mind on that one. Like, and ironically, all the expectations I have about what the album was going to be, what it was going to sound like, came from the Drake fans. They're the ones that were saying it's going to be a victory lap and it's Pete Drake and all. And so I'm like, oh shit, like this is going to be an amazing listen. And, you know, it can be in its own right. But when I start thinking about that, I start thinking about a lot of energy, you know, a lot of just sound, a lot of stuff going on. And so that's just where my mind was when I came into it. And then, you know, Legend comes in and yeah, he's bragging a lot. But at the same time, this is something I'm pretty much settled on. Like when it comes to Drake and his lyrics, he doesn't do it for me, unfortunately. And I think a big part of it is just because I've heard so many other rappers and some of the lyrics that they crank out and the way they say things is fucking incredible. And so for Drake to just tell me over and over, yeah, if I die, I'm a legend and I put Toronto on the map. Okay, cool. Can you like spice that up a little? Like, yes, what you're saying is very braggy, but the way you're saying it is kind of boring, honestly. It's like, no, I'm just going to tell you that 10 times. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
It like, and I think that's so interesting in how like perspective can like shape the way we view music. Because I remember when it came out, I was on my way to this conference, and I'm from inner city Detroit, man. Like, and I was at this like super wealthy boarding school that I had like I got a full ride scholarship
Oh,
to.
nice.
And I'm like in DC, never been to DC before, on my way to this conference. And I'm going up against like, you know, George Bush went to Exeter. So I didn't go to Exeter, not at all. Whatever. I doubt you have any Exeter folks. They're not smart enough to know Bob the Pop. But I was like debating up against Exeter kids, Horace Mann kids, like all these like fancy, just waspy schools, right? And listening to Legend, I'm getting hype as shit to like defend, you know, whatever point I was defending at the time.
Yeah.
And so like I think music is really beautiful in that way, in that like perspective is everything. Like I'm not the biggest J. Cole fan, right? Because I don't want to be reminded of like the struggle of blackness all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas like I think Drake presents as sort of the antithesis to that, which is like a triumph in like being this outcast nerd dude who's like, I mean, the balls on a kid who was in fucking Degrassi to be like, I am a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that's something I have to adjust to. Maybe it's more of a me thing, because I do notice this. I've noticed this a lot too. I've noticed this a little bit with music, more so with like online political comments. Like I remember when Trump was coming up, right? Like 2015. Trump was coming up and this and that. I remember there was a subreddit, the Donald subreddit for Trump, right? And I used to work night shift, and there was me and another guy. We would sit there, work. I mean, we were working and stuff, but when there was lows and stuff, we would just kind of hang around on the Donald, because we thought the whole thing was just this fucking joke. Like, we thought it was hilarious, this idea of Donald Trump and all this other shit. And so him and I would just laugh and laugh, and like the memes people were putting up and all this stuff, it's just ridiculous, right? Outlandish, this idea of Donald Trump being the president. And I think it was because him and we were probably naive in the sense of considering how stupid that was, that it could never be real. And so because of that, we had this layer of, I can't really take it seriously. It's just people talking shit online. It doesn't mean anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. And so I've noticed with myself and like with comments, not like this with my channel, but just in general, when people say shit on Twitter, when people say shit wherever, right? In my mind, my first place is, well, they're just saying shit to say shit. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't really have anything behind it. It's just words online. But that isn't always true. And so that can be a fault of my own, where I don't pick up on the maybe the sincerity of the message or the impact that's actually behind it. Like, no, I actually mean this shit. And so when I hear somebody like Drake say, oh, I'm a legend and I put Toronto on the map and, we're running the 6 and all this other shit, I go, I really, that's kind of my default place is, oh, okay, you're just saying shit to say shit. And so unless he says it in a fancy way, which he rarely does, unfortunately, I feel, sure, I don't really buy into it that much because I just feel like it's somebody who is on Twitter going, oh, like I could post on Twitter, I'm a legend. And people would go, oh, okay. What are you talking about? Like, right, who gives a shit? Right. So I think that's one of the positions I come from there.
Yeah. So hearing that, so like part of my job. So I'm in the theater world, and so part of my job is like reading all these scripts that the theater I work for.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All the scripts that get sent to us, and so it puts me in an interesting position of critique because at least these are like my personal values when it comes to critiquing these plays, is that like whatever my visceral reaction is, I have to keep that in check. Because I think for me, for me, what's helpful is like intent versus impact, right? And so, as playwrights, we're trained to like look at the intent of the artist rather than like what we would do. And this is like not me trying to fucking explain how critique works to you.
No, I understand. No, it's okay. You're right.
Okay, good. So I think like what might be helpful, particularly when it comes to Drake, is looking at intent, right? In looking at it contextually, because I mean, a lot of what he's saying on that first track, which is one of my favorite Drake songs, is true. I mean, it was him who, put The Weeknd on "Take Care," which gave Weeknd a career.
Oh no shit! So, yeah, like, I didn't know that.
Like, I mean, The Weeknd, I think he came out with House of Balloons in 2011, but no, it's my argument, and people might disagree with this, but it's my argument that no one would have given a shit if we hadn't heard him on Crew, if we hadn't heard some of his writing on Take Care.
He is great on the Crew. He's really good on that one. Really,
man, it's some of the best Weeknd shit that's out, and so like. In much of regards, it's like it's true. He put Kendrick Lamar on one of his first, platinum album looks on Take Care, and Kendrick Lamar was a star by then. So in many ways, like Drake is this generation's Jay-Z. He has, I believe that he's earned the right to talk all that shit. Now Jay-Z might dress it up in a, more fly way,
right.
but like. Drake has really earned the right to talk as much shit as he wants, I think, and I think there is something to be said about the plainness of it.
Yeah.
Because it is more so stated as something of fact, and there's really no subjectivity behind Drake's lines. Like in order to like listen to a Drake album, you have to buy into the fact that okay, this dude's great. Now let me listen to it.
And I think right there, that's the whole crux, right? Is there tons of people who don't buy into that. And I'm kind of there too. Like he hasn't convinced me yet. One thing I want to say before I forget was another aspect I was realizing is, I talked about people and what they say and it's just words and all this stuff. I also come from a background of hard rock and metal where people might not be saying the most impressive things, but they're fucking screaming it out, And so I also wonder if that plays a factor in how I perceive Drake and what he's doing, because you're just telling me you're a legend. Okay. Yeah, you put Toronto on the map. Okay. You're not really using any complicated way of saying that or interesting way of saying it. You're just saying it. Okay. And you're also just saying it. Like if he made this is not going to happen obviously, but if he made a metal album where he's screaming into the mic, I fucking put Toronto on the map, I'm a fucking like, oh, okay. Now, now I'm going to buy in a little bit because there's some energy here. Like when you were saying it was hyping you up before that debate, I was like, goddamn, I don't know how. Because for me, like Legend, even now, if I put it on, knowing it's a chill track, to me, that's the whole album. The whole album is a chill track. And so I get no hype from it at all. And I wonder if my metal background plays a part in that as well.
And that reminds me of a Drake bar. I think he says it on Diplomatic Immunity, which is I think 3 years later than if you're reading this. He says, "I listen to heavy metal for meditation," which is like so I think some of the things here could have been or are going to be stalled. And I don't know if you've had enough of Drake, but I still think that what you're looking for as far as bars go, as far as lyricism go, you'll find in Nothing Was the Same.
I hope so.
And
I am gonna do that album. I'm gonna take a break, and what I want to do, I mean, obviously I'm not doing it here. What I want to do is try and not talk about Drake at all, and let my brain just try and do a full wipe, and then come into Nothing With the Same. But see, maybe this is the flaw too, because there's some stuff you're talking about with the context of Drake and the idea of Reading This Too Late came out unannounced and went to number one, which that's a huge FU to the rest of the industry. Anybody who hates on Drake, those kind of points matter. So this is something that's difficult for me, is coming in blind, or at least blind enough such that I can let an album be what it is without a conception of here's what it's got to be to impress me, or here's what I'm expecting it to be, or whatever. But then also having that balance of here's what was going on at the time, here's why this album was a big deal, here's what it did to the industry at the time. Like, that's a hard line to walk,
Sure. And I mean, yeah, it's especially with Drake, because a lot of the appeal is like the in the moment moves of Drake, which is like, man, this guy will not stop. Like, even he got a lot of flack for Honestly Nevermind.
Yeah.
It went number one though. Like, it went number one.
Oh my god, dude, it's
Like,
great.
there's and I have to remind myself too, especially, and we were talking a little bit about this before we pressed record, where it's like my partner loves like all of the pop music, I think he's even a fucking Carly Rae Jepsen fan.
Oh
And
wow.
so it's like, yeah, oh wow, he's right. And so it's like, how do you reconcile with the fact that like it's popular for a reason, and that
Yeah.
like a good majority of people love this artist, and we spoke a little bit about this in the Take Care conversation that we had, but I don't know. I mean, and I have this thing. I think it just spans across all art, because I have the same thing with theater. Like, when I think of Hamilton, it makes me want to find the highest building and dive head first, right? Where it's like Lin-Manuel Miranda to me sucks,
Oh
but
my
it's people
god.
that know the Hamilton soundtrack from top to bottom and will like provide the same amount of energy defending that as like a theatrical masterpiece. So I think it's like it's a it's a thing that like as critics we have to grapple with all the time, which is like, and especially considering like the subscriber base that you have, which is like sort of granola dudes who are super into hip hop, like in the science of it, and like music nerds,
Yep.
right? And music nerds, and I'm a music nerd, but I'm an exception because I like Drake. Music nerds for the most part will not like Drake, but I noticed a lot of the music nerds coming out in the comments of if you're reading this is too late, actually not disagreeing with you, but disagreeing with, I guess, like the method of critique, which I find
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna talk about that too, the whole music nerd thing, right? There's I have a Discord server. Obviously, I mean, we're using it right now, and lots of people in there. We chat a lot and this and that. this little conversation came up a couple days ago. I was talking to somebody who's been part of the channel for a long time, great commenter, just great in giving me context for different albums, huge fan of music, all this other stuff. And we were started to talk about Young Boy NBA. And he was telling me, because, you know, the end of the year just happened, right? I think Spotify had put out their top streamed artists and all this other stuff. I think Drake was number 1. Young Boy was number 2. And he was chatting with me a little bit about that. I was like, well, what the fuck? Who's Young Boy? He's like, oh, well, Young Boy is a massive, massive, massive artist. The guy's fucking putting out mixtapes constantly. Like he did 9 last year or some shit, blah, blah. And I'm like, is he hip hop? Oh, yeah, he's hip hop for sure, blah, blah, blah. How come I've never heard of him? And he's like, well, because your circle of people, your channel, for, you know, however it is that it just happened. He said the same thing. Basically, you're just surrounded by a bunch of music nerds. And the music nerds, while they love music and, you know, they're going to elevate the people who they find to be more intricate in what they do, more precise, more skilled, whatever. And they're going to typically disregard the, I guess what you would call the McDonald's artists, right? Maybe they're not as complicated. They're not as complex. They don't have as many layers, but they're widely popular. And they almost look down on those people for being popular without having the elements that they consider to be key to making good music, you know?
Yeah, which like, yeah, and arguments like that, like, or perspectives like coming from the music nerd perspectives like that kind of like annoys me a bit, because it's like negating the fact that Drake has had a Jay-Z feature, Drake has had an Andre 3000 feature, Drake has had a Rick Ross feature, Drake has been considered, you know, Drake has had a Kanye feature.
Yeah.
Drake has, I think the only feature he hasn't had as far as like hip hop goats go is Nas.
Oh, okay.
And so Drake has been given a nod from the hip hop community, which means something. And I mean, a lot of his flows, if you want to get into the science of it, a lot of his flows have been copied across the board. And like on some of Drake's more hip hop tracks where he's just going and going and going, technically, poetically, and lyrically, those are very high level songs. And it's sort of like, I'm not comparing Drake to Prince or anything, but it's like I would love for the same argument to be given to Prince or to Michael Jackson, of like, you're not gonna tell me that Michael Jackson isn't a technically good musician.
Right.
You're just not gonna tell me that. But like to extend that to take that away from like the Michael Jackson of hip hop, I think is rooted in a lot of things, which would best be discussed in a sociology class. If you get what I'm saying, you know, like there's it's like hip hop. I think. Ooh. All right, Bob. I'm gonna say some controversial things. And these are my views.
That's why I love having you on, because you'll just say some shit.
Like I think a lot of like the unwillingness, and I'm talking about music nerds, I'm not necessarily talking about your perspective, because
Sure.
I think your perspective is like fair and flushed out, and you don't have like a basis, or you didn't have a foundation in hip hop.
Right. I just came in and started poking around. Yeah.
Right, and so I'm willing to give you way more leniency, and you have listened to some of the best that hip hop has to offer, so you know what the fuck you're talking about.
I appreciate it.
Or at least like you've built like a perspective that's grounded in something.
Sure.
A lot of music nerds are not hip hop's target audience, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and so I think in a lot of it, there's like it's sort of like the same thing that happens with Western art versus like indigenous art, where it's like there's an automatic elevation to like, you know, a more complex like triplet flow. Oh, fucking Andre 3000 is rapping in iambic pentameter. What the fuck?
Yeah. Right.
Or like fucking who's what's an artist I can make an example about? Fucking Eminem is perfect.
Okay.
Right. Where like, you know, you'll get a lot of Eminem is the greatest fucking rapper, blah 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 blah, negating the fact that like you had Das Effects, you had Big Daddy Kane, you had like all of these rappers that have been rapping exactly how Eminem is rapped, except it's packaged a little differently.
Okay.
And so like I think it's a lot of things that can delegitimize someone like Drake. And I think a lot of it is rooted in this like ivory tower ass view that people have, or that people have assigned to hip hop, which is like taking away the original intent about what hip hop really is. Hip hop was born, on a fucking park bench in the Bronx,
Right.
of
Right.
people just beating on tables and like it was the most accessible form of music, and that's why people love it. But I don't know. I don't know if I really made a point there.
You did well. Honestly, you put me into a parallel of rock, because one of my favorite bands, and a big band. It's weird because they're big, but they're not necessarily mainstream. There's a band called Tool, hard rock band. They've been around since the
Fuck yeah.
'90s. Big band, rabid fan base. I mean, they call themselves the Tool Army, because that's kind of what it is. Like, they just come and invade, right? And one of the jokes I like to say is that I'm a recovered Tool fan, and that I used to be a Tool fan, right? Like, I used to be, oh my fucking God, this, you don't understand, like, it's life-changing music, and the depth of the lyrics and what's going on with the beats and the bass, like, and then they spent 13 years between albums, and so I just kind of like, well, I guess they're done. And there was always these rumors, oh, the album's coming, the album's coming. Like, I basically just got tired of being fucking teased over a new album. I just got over it, and I kind of stopped listening to them for a while. Then the new album came out. It's really good. Really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like Tool. And it was kind of like a weird reset for me personally. But all that to set up the idea of, it kind of exists in metal too. Like, you'll hear a lot of people. I almost made this comparison on the other video, but I almost feel like Metallica could be, in a way, the Drake version of metal, in the sense that tons of awards, they've been around forever, great albums, mainstream, massive fan base. But if you really kind of look between the curtains or the cracks or whatever, Metallica fans, there's a lot of Metallica fans who fucking hate Metallica. Their first 4 albums were these just metal classics, and then they came out with the Black Album. That one just went huge, right? That's when they kind of really went mainstream. And all the fucking Metallica fans hated it. Hated it. Oh my God. They went mainstream. They sold out. They went from making, 11-minute songs to 4-minute songs so they could get played on the radio. They fucking sold out. Like, they hated it, right? They hated it. And then there's a bit of a gap, and then they came out with 2 more albums called Load and Reload. Metallica fans fucking hated it. It's not metal. What is this bullshit? You've got like a fucking like a slide guitar. You sound like country music. This isn't fucking metal. Like, they just hated it, right? And I don't know how well those two translate, but it was interesting to see the metal world do the same thing. This is what metal is. This is what it has to be. You can't deviate from that. If you do this, you're selling out. If you do this, you're not metal. Like, you could find so many comments about Lars, who's the drummer for Metallica. Mm-hmm. In the metal world, he's just not good compared to the other drummers who can do some of the shit that they do. I mean, Lars, yeah, if you listen to it, you go back, especially the older shit, you're just like, okay, he's tapping. He's tapping the one thing really fucking fast. But some of these other guys, it's like they got 8 arms, they're just doing all these complex schemes and shit like that. And so I think what you're saying, there is a lot of elements to truth. And it is interesting how it probably spans across all media. If you start talking to movie nerds, you probably start seeing the same thing. And book nerds really do it too. Like, they love, especially the book nerds that talk shit about the movie adaptation of the book that they love. Right?
Yeah. Oh man.
So it is. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of wild.
Yeah. It's. I don't know, and it sort of begs the question, like, why Well, first of all, who made anybody the president
Yeah,
of
right.
any of these genres of
Right.
fucking
Right.
music? Like, all right, Lear Cohen, like you get to define, like you get to define what music is, but also like, yeah, it begs the question, like, why are we listening to the music,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are we listening to it to give is it like an egoist thing where it's like, let's say Death Grips goes mainstream tomorrow, I
Yeah.
bet you'll get a chunk of Death Grips artists who have been diehard fans who are like, ah, fuck this, like they're not
Yep.
willing. A lot of people wouldn't be willing to listen to it because it would get, like, I don't know, 100 million plays in order to go mainstream, so it's sort of, and this is from person to person, and however you decide to like choose to listen to whatever music, I can really care less. Music is different for everybody, and music is beautiful, and you shouldn't really judge on anyone's music taste.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said about like what a fan of a particular band really is, what that kind of means. Does it lean more on the parasocial side for some people where they feel like they formed a relationship with this artist where it's like they can't really see anything bad. I think it's a little bit of that for me with Drake, because Drake has been there since I was 11, because he released Take Care in 2011, and I was 11 then. And every year I've grown up with Drake as like
Right.
every year he's released something that I can pinpoint to a specific point in my life. Like, oh shit. Oh yeah, I remember when Views came out. I was like 16 and like angsty and pissed off, and I was listening to One Dance, right? like,
Yeah.
like it's interesting. Like for me, I know that Drake is one of those artists that'll always have a soft spot. Even though, like, I might not listen to him every day. I think it's just, it's perspective. And I want to just revisit the NBA YoungBoy point very
Oh,
briefly.
sure.
I think the YoungBoy thing is really interesting. How it's like this is one of the biggest artists in the world, really,
I literally
and
heard about
no one
him
knows
a
who
week
he is.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've never listened to an NBA YoungBoy album in my life. I have a friend who's like produced shit for NBA YoungBoy randomly. Like he's like this very, as most producers are, just this very unsuspecting white kid who like makes these crazy ass trap beats. Like where did you come from?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think YoungBoy is interesting. And I think like it presents like the like YoungBoy and Drake are the antithesis of each other. Where YoungBoy has like the YoungBoy is like the gangster rap, like the leading voice in gangster rap, or however you want to, trap music maybe,
Okay.
uh, of today. Whereas like Drake is like that, it's like a pop rap. And so a lot of NBA YoungBoy's content is really like intense. It talks about all the shit you usually hear in hip hop:
Okay.
death, drug, destruction, the three Ds. And it's hard as fuck. Like the YoungBoy I've listened to has always been good. But he's just incredibly prolific,
Yeah.
and really isn't in many conversations for Grammys or anything like that, which I think is really interesting.
What I kind of like about that, though, is as I slowly learn about this guy, as big as he is and as much work as he's putting in, he doesn't fucking need any Grammys. Like, he doesn't need anybody to talk to him, apparently, or talk about him. Apparently, he's doing just fucking fine. And so it's kind of neat, too, because like we were talking about with these, like the ivory towers, right? I love it when an ivory tower gets established and they're the deciders, they're the gatekeepers of what's good and bad, and then somebody just walks right by and goes, I don't need you at all. I love that because it's not even necessarily a an underdog story. It's a no. You're not important. You think you're important, but you're not, and you don't dictate what is popular or what is good or whatever. I'm going to go make what I want to make, and people will like it, and that's all that matters. And maybe I
Yeah.
won't be the biggest movie or biggest album, biggest whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like, I'm still going to have fans, and I think that shit's kind of amazing. I love it when any kind of established power structure just gets like a good shaking. Like, hey, you aren't the deciders.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like sort of how horror movies, I'll compare it to horror movies, how horror movies are like now the most influential film genre, where it's like some of the most innovative shit is happening in horror movies. But people haven't taken horror movies seriously,
Yeah.
really ever. But like Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, like oh, perfect. Last night I saw the new movie Megan,
Oh,
where it's
how?
like it's
Yeah.
already like a pop occult classic, dude. The audience was crying laughing.
Oh, really?
And like, Megan sometimes she broke out in a song and like there would be standing ovations
Oh my
like from the
God. Oh my God.
dude, it's awesome. And like some shit, like some content across all forms, it's like fuck it. It's like kind of awesome. Like, Rocky Horror Show. I'm sure people were confused
Yeah.
as
Right.
fuck when
Yeah.
Rocky Horror Show came out. But then there was a contingent that was like, fuck it, it's awesome. I personally don't like Rocky Horror Show. I don't like musicals.
I'm not a
But
huge musical guy either. Yeah.
yeah, like who gives a shit? Like if I wanted to if I want to listen to music, I'll listen to music. If I want to see it play, I'll see it play.
Right.
I'm sorry, but that's a controversial take I have. But I sense that it won't be too controversial for your subscriber
Right.
base. I don't think they'll give a fuck. But yeah, man, I'm happy that like do you think it feels do you think it was like a good lesson learned, just like the pushback that you
Oh
got
yeah.
from
Absolutely.
yeah
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah
I said in the video too, like on that specifically that reaction, I myself lost my own plot because the whole to me the keystone of this whole channel, the only thing that is keeping it up is my having an open mind. If it's
yeah
just me going in and listening to an album and having an expectation and going, oh, well, this doesn't meet my expectation, and then shitting on it, the channel's dead, in my opinion. Nobody's going to care about my opinion because you can't take it seriously because it's not based on having an open mind. That is the foundation. So in a way, it was good. It sucks that it was Drake because Drake is so polarizing, right? But it was a good experience to have a bad experience in the sense that, especially with this year, I want to do, if I can, if they drop, a new album every month. So
true
start slowly shifting the channel towards current content because I would love, for my long-term plan, I would love to be one of those channels where it's like, hey, I'm going to listen to the new album. I'm going to give a review on the new album. I would just like to be, even if it's a tiny little pocket, I would like to be part of the hip-hop conversation. If that happens,
sure
cool. If it doesn't happen, so it goes. No big deal. But you got to have a fucking open mind. You got to. And, the whole Megan thing, right? And the ivory towers. And I wonder, I was thinking about this earlier. I wonder if it's just this constant circle of, finding something, loving something, intellectualizing something, and then turning it into this sacred cow where this is the thing and this can't be challenged and this is the defining line and you have to breach this threshold. And I wonder if it all boils down to taking shit too seriously. We're taking
that's
it too
exactly
seriously.
what it is. That's exactly what it is, dude. Like of course like if like I don't know, man. I just there's like a misery that like is wrapped up in it. That's like and it's like kind of sad. And I think with the enclave of like all these like women rappers that are sort of like taking over the game and like outselling and out rapping some male artists. Like people are like, oh, all she talks about is shaking her ass and
Yeah, right.
great. Who cares? You know how long women haven't been able to shake ass? And
Right.
now that there's finally multiple women that are like, yes, I shake my ass whenever like, what a miserable fucking human being to like not only like music because they're talking about shaking ass.
Yeah.
Or and I think and I'm not calling you miserable. I hope you know that.
No,
Sean.
I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. But like I don't know, man. Music's supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be fucking
Like,
fun.
and especially rap music. You had Das Effects, one of the highest selling rap groups of all time. They got big because they kept rhyming. They kept putting iggity at the end of words. Dumb diggity diggity dig. Like that shit is fucking terrible,
Right.
but it's such fun music.
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, if you go out, like if you go in a club, if you go to a bar, you're gonna listen to a Drake song because it's fun fucking music.
Yep.
And there's something to be said about just like wanting joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I was somewhere. I don't remember where it was. We were waiting in line to order, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's Drake. That's a Drake song right there. I know it. That one's Drake." I remember fucking 20 years ago, I was in Best Buy. I was in the CD aisle, and I was looking at some stuff, and this guy was on the phone with his buddy, and he was bitch. There's a rock band, metal band called Deftones. They just
Oh, my roommate loves Deftones.
Yeah, they just released a new album. I had already listened to it a couple of times. I liked it. I was like, yeah. And the guy was there. He was in the CD aisle. He was on the phone bitching to his friend about how he was going to try and return the CD, which I don't think they were going to. Anyway, because it wasn't heavy enough. And I remember like hearing, you know, his half of the conversation. He was basically just complaining about how there's only three songs that are hard. The rest aren't hard enough, like blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking to myself, well, I mean, okay, you don't think it's heavy enough. I thought it was pretty heavy, but it's like, well, then go listen to the heavy album. Like, what's wrong? And then there's a great interview I love. So the lead singer of Tool, his name's Maynard, and they were getting some flack because slowly over time they went from being pretty loud and screaming and then not quite screaming as much, right? They evolved. And the singer said, look, I don't want to spend my whole life screaming. Like, if I scream my whole life, then what am I actually screaming for? What does it amount to? Because I'm not growing as a person. I'm not evolving from this misery and this rage into a person that's actually calmed down and, like, made peace with life, you know?
1,000%. And that's why, you know, it's tough talking about contemporary hip hop with a lot of like the historical hip hop heads, like my dad or whatever, who was like black people make hip hop for the majority. Like, and I will be the first to say there are some fire ass white rappers out here who I like, who I love. But it's hard because it's like, man, where's the real shit? Where's the real shit? I don't
Right.
know. Black kids are like kind of set up kind of nice now. Like, well, I would like not overall, but like, and again, sociology class.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
but like black people, this is the best position we've ever been in. There's a new upper middle class blackness that's going on right now. And so there doesn't need to, there's not really, there is a place for the public enemies of the world, but like not as much. Like before, it was important to talk about that shit because fucking Reagan was president,
Right.
and
Right.
making hip
Right.
hop when Reagan was the president. And again, these are my own views. You know that they're not reflective of anything else. You know, because nothing. I love nothing more than a conservative hip hop head. I just think it's the best shit in the world, man. I love it. So actually, yeah, if you're a conservative hip hop head, please hit me up. I really want to have a conversation with you, and I just want to listen. It doesn't even have to be a debate. I just want to hear your perspective. But yeah, man, and there's an artist that I like. His name is Kevin Garrett. He's sort of like this indie pop dude who has made super sad music, and that's how he's identified. He's super self aware. Like he took a video at the beginning of the year, like, yeah, I'm seeing myself on Spotify raps and stuff, and I was the most listened to artist for people crying in the bathtub. Like very self aware guy. But now he's making happier music, and there's like an evolution there. And I'm in a house full of artists, and you know, for a while, all three of us had the perspective of like, in order to make the best art, there has to be a form of suffering. But that's not really true. Like
Yeah.
there can be suffering present,
Right.
but it's like you don't have to prioritize suffering for the art because then it's gonna look one masturbatory. It's like who really gives a fuck, and like what what are you really saying just in all of this misery, and how are you also growing as a person? Because there's like a certain, like, I'll compare it to rappers who are like in their late 30s still talking about all the perks that they pop, all the women that they get.
Right.
It's like, buddy, you're
Right.
almost 40. Like, have you not grown as a man at
Right.
least? Like, where are your principles? Like, that shit is kind of sad to see. And so I think, like, as artists, there's a middle ground that we have to reach between honoring emotion, but also making like uplifting shit. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. No, and that's fucking perfectly said, man. I totally agree. Absolutely. Also, too, I think there's a bit of industry. I want to call it industry lag. I don't know if that's really the right term, but like think about these artists that come through and they're new and they're shaking things up and people don't like it and blah blah blah. There's also a bit of industry lag in the sense of the industry itself being able to capture it, jump on it, and then capitalize it, and like, no, now this is and make money out of it, Because I was just thinking about like the sad stuff. If you're singing sad stuff all the time, or if you're doing this all the time, I started thinking about Rage Against the Machine and how their whole method was, basically raging against capitalism and blah blah blah, and how that was a big deal at the time. But then also, all they were doing was feeding the machine that they were against because they're just selling, 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 and the industry's making all this money off of them and stuff like that. But so I also wonder too, just the idea of, yeah, where's the real shit at? Where's the good shit at? That's kind of almost not necessarily an industry mindset, but I'm sure that serves as a type of gatekeeping that prevents new shit from bubbling up. And the fan base has a say in that as well. But until that new shit can come in and kind of punch through that barrier and people go, oh, we can make money off of this, then it shifts a little bit. Like I wonder just how much that comes into play as well, because I'm sure that's a factor in some way.
Yeah, it's like yeah, dude. We have these conversations all the time, and they're a little bit less intellectual because we're in a legal state. We're usually stoned off of our cheeks, man. So it's usually like, yeah, man, like I think capitalism, but it's you have to find, I think, a middle ground as an artist between, again, like honoring your own desires, but also like I don't want to be a starving artist my entire life. Like
Right.
there has to be like a marketability to it, and I think that's what separates like the real shit. If anything, it separates the real shit from the self-aggrandizing shit. Because I hate an artist who's like, yeah, I'm in it solely for the pure of art. Like, it's like, oh, congratulations, you're not accessible and you're being an asshole about like, your own work. Like, there's something to be said about work that's accessible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, here we go. We're almost at an hour. I'll drop we'll drop the final bomb for Drake here. And I've
Let's
got it
do
all
it.
set up. And this is, like you were saying, this is purely my opinion, so I'm not like trying to, oh, I guess I'm implying. I shouldn't. I'll just fucking own it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like if I walked up to the CEO of McDonald's, right? The CEO, the guy who's in charge of everything, the fucking ruler of the empire, and I told him, you're the McDonald's of fast food, he would say, fucking right I am. Goddamn right, I'm the McDonald's of fast food. I am McDonald's. I am the king. No one can touch me. No one sold as many burgers as I have. Nobody's worldwide like I am. Blah, 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 this and that, right? On and on. He just owned that shit. If you walk up to Drake and tell Drake, you're the McDonald's of hip hop, I feel like he'd get pissed off.
I don't know, man.
What do you think about that idea? Drake being the
Like,
McDonald's of hip hop and everything that implies, even though McDonald's itself, like the grocery store I go to, there's a McDonald's right next door. There's fucking cars around that building every time I go there,
and that's
surrounding the building.
I think, his response to that may have been, have you ever tried McDonald's fries?
Oh, dude, I love that. I love that. I don't like McDonald's, but I love their fries. I absolutely love their fries. Yeah.
There's an undeniability to it. and McDonald's makes billions of dollars a year, and it's like it's the people's fucking food, and
Yep.
like oddly enough, I think Marx would have loved Drake.
And maybe it really just it is that simple. I love how I don't have any notes. You didn't walk in with any notes. We just kind of went through our fucking conversation, right? And I love how I feel like we went through a pretty reasonable, natural path of just like, yeah, there are some people, some of us take it a little too seriously. Some of us are a little too closed-minded. Some of us don't like the idea that other people can enjoy things that we don't enjoy. Some people don't want you to enjoy things. Like, it's all these layers, and it at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't fucking matter. People love Drake. That's all there is to it. That's the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think I like really appreciate that. Like, I mean, now it's been twice we talked about Drake. How like this like standard fucking like Coca-Cola ass artist always leads always leads to like a larger, more intellectual conversation
Yeah,
about critique in art. I think that shit's crazy.
it's great. It really is a
Yeah.
lot of fun because I feel like if you went with somebody else, like let's say Kendrick, right, or somebody like that, immediately I feel like this will sound like a slight. It's not really a slight in my mind, but I feel like if you start with somebody else like that, you immediately almost start in this weird ivory tower to begin with.
Totally.
And that in itself is already what's interesting about Drake is it's like Drake, because he is the people's food, it's like he's this ground level in a way. You don't
Yeah.
exist in this weird little tower. Are you aware of Dead End Hip Hop, the YouTube channel Dead End Hip Hop?
No, no,
They
no.
do album reviews and stuff like that, and it was really neat watching their review of reading this. It's too late because some guy was saying this and that, and blah blah blah. Talking about the lyrics, and the other guy goes, "Well, yeah, but it's Drake." Well, what do you mean? Well, he gets a pass because it's Drake. Why the fuck should he get a pass because it's Drake? Like, and it breaks into that whole debate, right?
Yeah.
But it is just interesting how, as I try and like take all these pieces and try and solve the puzzle that is Drake and why he's so popular and blah blah blah, and I go through it all and have this great talk with you and blah, and I get to the end and I go, all I'm doing is taking something that's simple and making it really fucking complicated. It's just people like Drake. Done. There's nothing to fucking figure out. There's nothing to solve. Nobody's telling me I have to like Drake. Nobody's telling me I have to think he's the best at this. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Millions of people listen to Drake. They're allowed to do that. End of story. Done.
And Drake never pretends like he's not that. And that's what I appreciate the most. And dude, like, I mean, you should see like my library. I have like Robert Frost. I have like Shakespeare. I have Pablo Neruda. Like, I am a fucking word fiend. Like, I love all of that shit. Yet, Drake is like my favorite rapper ever, you know? Um, yeah, man, it's like it's interesting, and I think my perspective like changes in all these conversations too. Because I just love like I love art in general and being able to talk about Drake in particular, which is like he's a very touchy artist. It's just like
Yeah,
it's awesome.
it
It's
is
sort of like how
awesome.
it's sort of like how people fucking hate Warhol, and like you have to like
Yeah, yeah, sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All
But
right.
thanks for having me
Yeah,
back, man.
absolutely. No, so I always do this at the end. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up?
Um, no, I think stream Drake, stream Honestly Nevermind, stream Her Loss, and
What did you
take
think of
care.
her loss? What did you think of her loss?
Oh, dude, Her Loss is awesome. I
Yeah.
think like I think it's more of 21 Savage's show, if I'm being honest, and I don't think that it was. I think that was the intent of the album, really, because I think that's what that album I think solidifies 21 Savage as another one of those like pop rappers.
Okay.
But it's like the production is super heavy and super fucking hard. And there are a couple songs where we get 21 Savage rapping in like a boom bap kind of way, which I think is really interesting for 21 Savage. And you have like some pretty cool bars. There is some controversy though, because he set a bar about Megan
Oh, I heard
being
about that. Yeah.
but yeah, so that was kind of fucked up. And he like came at Ice Spice, who's personally one of my favorite new rappers, but I'm also a gay man. Gay men love fucking Ice Spice, man. It's just something about her.
No.
So like I love it. I do think that like some of the social critiques are fair, but also it's fucking music. Leave like the social critiques out of it personally for me. I think there's a conversation to be had about it, but who really cares? All in all, I think it's a really good album.
Yeah, it was interesting because it seemed like the initial reception was bad, and then the tone changed pretty quickly on it, and it was almost like people were so happy to shit on Honestly Nevermind, and it like that wave kind of rode into Her Loss. So like Her Loss came out and people were still so busy shitting on Honestly Nevermind that they just kind of kept shitting on the new one before they even really had a chance to like settle in with the new one. Because I did
Yeah,
notice people hated it. Well, they acted like they hated it, and then they're like, actually, this ain't that bad.
yeah, I think it was like a matter of just people sitting with it, and I think like it wasn't really that kind of album. I don't think wasn't really expected because that again is like one of those albums that came out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
there was a 1 week rollout and then it dropped, and it was still huge, which is surprising. It was one of the highest selling albums of the year. It ended up, but yeah, man, I think it's like just that classic. It's classic textbook trap music, trap production, trap lyricism. And there's this run of bars that Drake goes on. He's like, maybe I should do a 10. No, maybe I should do a 5, split the 10. If the party live, do the 5 again. Talking about like Adderall. And so it's like, he gets like a lot more creative. So for what it's worth, I think you would warm up to that album way quicker.
Yeah.
Especially if there's like another feature artist on the record too. I
Oh,
think you
okay.
would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah. Well, William, dude, it is always a fucking pleasure to hang out with you for an hour. Man, I love talking with you. You're so much fun. Whenever I do, nothing was the same. I'll hit you up again. We'll have another conversation if you're open to it. I think it'd be great.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the Drake Fellow of Bob the Pop
Yep.
Pop University.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I'm always it's always fun. It's always a pleasure. And I
Yeah,
always look
man.
forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, everybody who was watching, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I felt it was pretty fucking good, man. I think we had a good little path just winding around, exploring all the weird pockets. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon.